Hello, everyone, and welcome to This Week in Hospitality Marketing, a live show number 563. I'm your host, Lauren Gray. Thank you so much for joining us. As promised from last week, we're going to change topic tone from AI and everything that's out there about platforms and integrations and meta search and so forth, and kind of go back to a more traditional, sometimes more often neglected section of our discussion in relationship to marketing, and that is group sales. Now, it has been the pillar of productivity for hotels, hospitality, for generations, for decades. And it has gone pretty much unchanged during this time, in the sense both of the scope of what it offers to the hotel, whether the hotel is designed and built specifically for larger group activity, or whether it's a tertiary value segment to it. It's part of the traditional top tier revenue sources where you have your transient versus your group. It is of the first two categories that are always the definition of strategy when it comes to marketing. But it has gone relatively unmolested over the past 30 so years at least, in the sense of what it does to get business. Anybody that's worked in group sales, DSOM, Director of Sales and Marketing, DSOM, is faced with a very specific process. Usually a hotel that has sufficient group sales, bank facilities and so forth being that part of that process, has a traditional DOS that's sitting on top, Director of Sales, part of the executive committee to the hotel, followed by an assistant DOS or just sales team or salesperson. There's usually a catering banquet manager that's associated with the sales team that works on the food and beverage specific aspects of group sales. And then you'll get some usual sales assistant that's trying to work through the ranks of those titles as they progressively become more and more educated and experienced. And that nascent team, expandable or contractible, depending upon the size of the property and or the additional amenities associated for the property, is pretty much the bread and butter structured way that we approach sales for a hotel. And to go even one step farther into the more traditional, it is through a very linear process that we tackle group sales interests. And it is usually in one of two formats. You have your traditional RFP, which is more for corporate group sales. And then you have your inquiry sheet and you have your SMRF group sales business, where the interest may be, again, about SMRF business as to the nuances of what they're interested in, capacities and sizes, so forth and so on, whether it's a rooms only grouping, more RFP related, more usually. And then you have the food and beverage aspects of it that could combine with it, which can be a part of a corporate RFP, or it can be of a query that then the salesperson engages with the interest and follows up with it. And most of the leverages associated with group sales has been the frequency of the requests, the penetration capability of their RFPs, and to the diversification of them signing up for and responding to RFP queries to their market, citywides and so forth. And the expeditiousness of replies to any inquiries has been usually the main focuses associated with group sales and efforts. Properties have had their nuances where they're exceptionally good at weddings or exceptionally good at associations, or whether it's corporate or whether it's conferences. They all have their niche, and hotels have been built around, in competition to hotels in the same market, to address more specific group interests if the group is their focus. The percentage of group business that contributes to the hotel can range anywhere from 20-ish% all the way up into the 80 percentile, where it is traditionally a very much related conference center hotel, adjacent to usually a city conference center as well. And they are very much about group block business, depending upon how they were built. So that's a long entrance into our topic today of rethinking group sales into a new way of really identifying buyer types, because we have changed in this ability of group sales. One tool does not fit all, as the old adage goes. If all you have is a hammer, it looks like a nail. If you only have one tool, RFP process, linear process, that it goes down one path, I have an RFP, place to go for an RFP, query for an RFP, then that's a linear progression of communication. If there is not an RFP need and it's more of an inquiry, it goes into that channel and it goes in that direction. Now, it has over time been trying to be segmented into large scale group interest versus small group interest. And we've had some flexibility as to looking for spontaneous group interest with short book windows. Usually RFPs are strategically far in advance. If you're responding to an RFP now, request for proposal, for those that may not be familiar with the acronym, then it is usually far enough in advance that that begins the process of discovery, negotiations, presentations, contracts, conclusion, hopefully conversion. And then, of course, that is preemptive to the actual event itself. That has served us well for a very long time. It has, unfortunately, lived past its life, and it is still the traditional way that most hotels operate their sales teams. So what do I mean by buyer types? Well, fascinating article in Hospitality Today, actually, is the inspiration of this. One of our colleagues in the Hospitality Marketing Club brought up the article and discussed about effective ways of creating marketing initiatives for these buyer types that this article was referring to. And let me give you some ideas of how what the difference is between group sales versus buyer types. I just described to you the traditional group sales modalities, RFPs for long duration. If we're seeing very short-term group initiatives, very short-term, we're seeing a lot of diversity of group variances. And they don't fall under the traditional categories that we've always put them under, of group sales versus SMERF, which is, weddings have a whole different nuance on how they get sold compared to corporate events, breakouts and meeting spaces and configurations in rooms and room capacities and room block sizes for events. All of those things still function in the logistics associated with group sales, but they don't function in the world of the discovery of marketing for group sales. You have a very large diversity of people that are not professional group sales bookers, but are in a role in their corporate relationship or in their business relationship or in their social relationship where they are being tasked to make these plans, these logistical plans. And from this, they have a certain nativity to it, and they have a certain KPI to what they're interested in and what they're wanting to have. Anybody that's new to group sales businesses always knows the new people that are trying to do group sales because they feel like they should be very highly focused on, because they're bringing a large, in their mind, their relationship, business to you. So you see it as a 10-room block compared to, other room coming in for hundreds of rooms of blocks. But to that person, that is a huge piece of business, and they're not understanding why they don't have the prioritization of certain things, or why they don't get certain information back from you in certain ways, or why there's not more flexibility about other things or more inclusive things. There's a lot of variations to these needs for group business. Some of the segments that from a buyer type perspective that need to be considered. We have our corporate, which is very much of a legacy. You have distributed workforce. Now that examples of something like that would be something like HR or people operations associated with training, corporate getaways, corporate events, think tanks, hack sessions. Those are variations of a distributed workforce where they're assembling everyone to come to an area, to a specific place that normally work in disseminated areas, disseminated places, to collectively work together. Now, like I said, that can be a training session, that can be a hackathon, that could be logistical awareness. There's lots of variations of purposes for this, but that really is the encapsulation of this type of segment of distributed workforce. That doesn't work well with an RFP because that has its specific needs. They're worried about ease and speed and experience. Like they want to optimize the fact that they have everyone under one roof, so to speak. And they don't have a central place that they can do it. And they want it in the hotel that the people are going to be staying at for the convenience factor of elevator home kind of mentality. And they want the experience of it. They want the nicer facilities. They want the exclusionary area of the restaurant. They want the access to the amenities. They want that aspect associated with why they're bringing these people together. They want it to be fast and easy. They don't want this to be arduous. They're not doing this all the time, so they're not fluent in it all the time. So they really want it to go smoothly through what they're visioning, what they want, logistically what they need, and experience-driven for what they hope is the result of that collaboration. Another segment that can be considered in this process is brand marketing. This goes to marketing officers, agencies, and so forth. This now goes into what the presentation is. It's about the visuals, so that you have the room that isn't a little dark room, that's a meeting room that's blasé and bland and square and boxy with neon lights. It's more of a spacious, got a visualization to it, maybe a view through a glass wall, or it has a atmosphere to it, because it has to combine with their storytelling and their ability to wow and make the presentation that they're drawing everyone together for. This is where maybe they're aggregating a lot of either current or potential clients into a mix. And they want it to be very dynamic in the sense of the wow factor of what they're wanting to be the focus of. A lot of what they care about, again, the visualization of what they're doing, the ability to create continuity between storytelling of this is where we're dining, then we're going to go to this room, we're going to have this kind of event, then we're going to go take care of this amenities, we're going to have this adventure for team building, we're going to come back to this. But this whole relationship of it is related to the timing of what they can do. That it's just not, here it is, then we have a break, then we have lunch on your own, and then in the afternoon we have the recap session, and then we have dinner on your own, or a cocktail reception, and then you have dinner on your own. That's the normalcy that we deal with on legacy aspects. There's a new version of that brand marketing segment that doesn't even come into the picture. Those things are bland and boring, and they don't reply back to any of the information you've sent them that's even sounding like that. Then you have other things, another segment like a creative influencer. Again, these are more agents. They're trying to wow and impress. They're trying to bring something together to make a pitch or presentation. They're looking for all the things that are micromanaging capable of the variations of the food, the nuances of the food, the nuances of the displays and the breakouts as to the creativity of them, the uniqueness that the room can be laid out in, the visualizations that can be put into the room, what have you. They're looking for the wow that they made this event at a level with your hotel that is out to impress what they want to have their attendees see them as. Another segment, small business founder, very granular, okay? These are startups. These are ones that have smaller nested groups of people. They just need a clean, open, solid space privately that they can be totally cocooned in what they need to do. Their aspect of what they would be dialoguing with your sales team is the speed of saying, hey, I need something 2 days from now. I need something 3 days from now. I need something tomorrow. This immediate, we're going to get some people in. It worked. All of a sudden, schedule's freed up, and now the 4 people I wanted to have come in, fly in, they're able to fly in or drive in or whatever it is. They have time to be together. I need this put together now, and I need a nice, clean area to do this in. That speed and simplicity that they need. That all of these segments don't fit into how we have historically done our sales. And the last segment, just to draw some comparisons to, is community and events, associations, meetups. If anybody's handled associations, they know it's about affordability. How much money can be, how much can be squeezed out of the money that they're spending? How many things can be leveraged to be getting something from you to make the event as generous to the participants as possible? A lot of times, they're asking for break-even money to those that are participating so that the event can happen. So once it's been roughly budgeted and figured out as to what this monies would mean per person, then of course it's up to them to determine how many people that is, to determine the value per person, and then that's the money that you have to work with. But to do that, they have to understand clearly what can they get for what they spend. That goes into the affordability conversation and flexibility of what you can do. Like, they will be willing to accept less costs and be more flexible about how you can move and migrate them. They may not get the biggest, best room, but they got a nice room. And if they don't hit a certain number of people, then they're going to have a smaller room, but they're okay with that, because that means they don't have to worry about spending extra money to guarantee the bigger room. These are all variations to the conversation for group sales. So all of these segments, as example, okay, have different buying logic, okay, as to how do they interact with properties? How do they interact with you when reaching out to you? How do you interact in front of them to make them aware of what you're willing and capable of doing based on their category of segment, of what kind of buyer they are? Going back to kind of the top of the pile. Corporate pile, corporate. Again, that's very much business as has been. RFPs, negotiations, um, stability of costs, comparative costs between you and somebody else that might be in the contention for their RFP. RFP is simply that, request for proposal. They've sent it out to a variety of places. They're seeing how each place responds. They're weighing their options between those responses. They have their preferences, but then they have their criterias. And they're trying to match to make sure that they get the best yield for what they're wanting for the prices that they've already defined. When you start dealing with the experience aspect of what these types of groups, not corporate, but in general, others, creative influencers, distributed workforce, those types of segments, you start getting where you need somebody to understand the diversity beyond your border. You need to know that these experience-driven categories, going back to the creators and the branding and the distributed workforce and small businesses, even to some degree, you need to understand what's offsite for you. You need to understand what variances they can have to have an isolated space in which they can be like a retreat. The biggest things about experiences is that they usually need a high conversion speed. These are usually, going back to the segments, the creative influencers or the small businesses or the CMOs that are looking to make an impression on a potential client. These things come together quite quickly. So they need a very quick conversion speed between what they're envisioning, what you have available, and what does that mean in the sense of costing and facilitation and logistics. The other aspects of the variations of these buyer types is more of the creative ones. What are they looking for? These ones are really out for shock and awe, where they want to really impress who they're bringing. So a lot of what you can offer on the high end and the very wow factor, the better rooms, the larger rooms, the better views, the more consistent food amenities, usage of the amenities at the resort, what have you, or the hotel. And premium ADR that goes with this. So a lot of that has to come to, if they're going to pay that money, you have to be able to amp up what they're looking for in a way that makes you stand up above what they might be comparing you against. Then another aspect of these types of buying personas is partnerships. This goes back into the creative and the PR conversation of what type of buyers are looking for this. They're looking for, say you have a distributed workforce, you have an organization that's in your market and they are bringing everyone together and they're going to have an event and so forth, and they've picked you because of what they think your property is like, or they've experienced your property and they feel that fits to what they want. These are the repetitive ones that will have short window opportunities, that have pre-relationships with you, that you can go back to and say, and they can come back to you, I should say, and very clearly say, hey, you know what we did before? Yeah, blah, blah, blah. We want to do that again. These are the dates. Tell us we can do that. Very quick, very precise, very repetitive. Always going to need something, always going to want to change something. But for the most of it, pre-negotiations of the parameters of the relationship already exist. Cost factors, variations, food types, room types, all the things that worked well from the last event that they had with you is brought right back into the next conversation. That has the ability, when it comes to going out for those ones, is reputation leads successful marketing. The more a company that has done this with you likes what they've done with you, then other companies that they interact with will also say, well, if you liked it and we had fun, or we joined you or whatever, and we liked it, then that's what we want to do. That's the place we want to go do for it. It has a great symbiotic value to whom you do business with. The earned media value of that is phenomenal, because once you paid marketing wise to get in front of these clients, and these clients you were successful with, you can diminish your cost to acquire these clients dramatically through the repetition of value. Equate this in old traditional values. When you did for smart business with bar mitzvahs, bat mitzvahs, you did ethnic events and so forth, that once you were made aware of in the community, that you were sensitive to all the things that are necessary for a successful event for that community, you become on a short list of preferred vendors for them. And any other future events in that community, you are actually reached out to say, hey, you did my friend's bat mitzvah, or you did my friend's ethnic event. I'd like to do that, but I need to do more. I need to do it differently. But you're already in the conversation with them because they already have that familiar relationship with you. That has a lot of initial upfront expense to make an event happen, to be successful in that community, to validate them coming back to you again. Now, the other is, and this has been around, but think of it as more of a behavioral thing, rapid response, in the sense of how small groups need immediate replies and answers. They think of this as that if they reach out or they go to your website and they're forced to an RFP, they leave. They don't have time for it. They're not here to figure out how to answer your preconceived questions to what they mentally already know that they want. They've already done their outline research and have qualified your property as being within consideration for the factors that they need: room types, locations, transportations, amenities, whatever it is. They've already identified your property as being optioned. But if you force them through this singular linear way of doing business with you for groups, it doesn't fit their speed to process. They need to be able to communicate with you, already familiar with your product, so they don't have to go through the, hi, so you're interested. Do you know much about us? Let's tell you about our rooms. Hey, why don't you come over and do a site visit? And they don't have time for that. What they do need is, I've seen your site, I've seen this. Ambiguously, I don't know all these details, so I would like to understand more these menu variations or these menu types or these cost factors. Are they flexible or whatever it is? This meeting space, what's your Wi-Fi speed? What groups capacities do you have? Can I make this room shaped like this? Do this. They're down to that specific iteration with you. And if you force them through go to the RFP, we'll get back to you, or leave a message and we'll get somebody to get back with you, or fill out an interest form and we'll get back with you. They'll try it once, in the sense that they'll see that that's the option, realize they don't have time for it, and go on to the next hotel that has the same potential that you once had, by seeing whether or not they can communicate directly with them and close that event quickly and fastly. So right now, in the way that group sales runs, it's a very elongated, linear process. Engagement, discovery, education, very similar funnels. Marketing-wise, marketing has traditionally gone over and said, here's your lead gen. Here's we're going to advertise that we have all this stuff, and it's going to drive it to a page that has a form, your RFP or your marketing, or your interest form, for the Smurf business or whatever. We're going to drive all this business to the page. The page is uninformed. Even if you added good content, even if you added room designs, layouts, pictures of previous successful events, highlights of reviews, all the things that you think have a value proposition to the traditional way of selling group sales, the way I've just described these actions of these buyer segments, a lot of them are just going to bounce off that page, because they're at the front door when they really want to be in the living room at this point. They already want to be able to talk about tangible things that they already know that they need, that you can or cannot do, not, I got to go through the cotton candy fluff discussion to get to the hardcore questions that I really need answers for to make these choices, especially when I'm on time variances that the hotel doesn't seem to be in the same sequence of. Sales teams will open up the call and be like, so when you're thinking about this, and anything less than 90 days out is like, well, there's going to be certain, we only have certain days or whatever. The natural way that we respond to group sales interests already is prohibitive for a lot of these buyer behaviors, because a lot of them are simply about, these are my dates, these are the questions I have, or these are the things that I need. Tell me first, are either of those things an obstacle? Because if they are, thank you, I appreciate it, got to move on to the next call. Okay, if none of them are, great, let's continue the conversation, but don't shove me into the upselling. Variations should come in. Let me show you what we're talking about. It says that, but it means this. All the soft smoky mirror kind of stuff that we do, okay? It has to be truthful, upfront, and clear. And so marketing for group sales, which is the core of our conversation today, is each category of interest has its initial expense, some higher, some moderate, some sustainable. But all of them have a variance as to the continuous of cost of driving those types of businesses. All of the segments I just mentioned are targetable for what you're trying to sell to them, but it's not driving them to the same hammer that all sees nails. It's one tool fits all. Some RFP page or some query form. Okay, it's tangible communication where they don't want to talk to somebody until they know it's worth talking to you. So give them relatable information specific to the buyer type that they are on their own source. Okay, so they don't have to find it in a long scale page. Don't just regulate group sales as well. Salespeople do it once they get them on the phone. That's when they do their business. So we're not going to do a lot of variant marketing. We're just going to say we can do group sales. Here's a really nice page that tells everything that we can do. Sample menus, blah, 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 testimonials, blah, blah, blah. And whoever's interested can sort out what they're interested in. No, you need pages related to each of the buyer types that we're talking about that addresses the things that are of most interest to them, their KPIs, and the examples that they value to know that you can or cannot do, and have a means of communication that is relatable to the segment of the buyer so that it can be expeditiously handled. Not everyone has to be talked to that day, but it does have to be in some sequence of time that is relatable to the interest that they have. And anything triggering wise that says it's within a certain period of time, depending upon that, immediately prioritizes how it gets notified to the internal team as to the interest that they did see. If there's any call, if there's any chat, if there's any feedback that they did interact with, the very page that it came from should be the benchmark as to what goes next from your team to them. We're just not built like this, though. We're still built with the DOS, with the assistant DOS, with the sales team member, maybe or two, catering manager, maybe a two, assistant, maybe a two, and Smurf business versus, and we run it through the linear process that we've always run it before. And that's what creates this disparity of marketing group, because marketers get frustrated. They shove the traffic, they shove the targeting to a single source. And then group sales, nothing's coming out of this. Marketing's first reaction is, well, we sent you all this stuff. What happened to all the stuff we sent you? Well, it's not qualified. It's just people are not, they don't want to buy. No, it's not. It's what problem is being sent to one thing for a catch-all. It's a one source fits all that doesn't work anymore. We have to have different buyer types, different timelines, different content. And when you target specifically that kind of content to the page that's most relevant to it, you're going to find the greatest value in truly marketing group sales. So, to my topic, rethinking group sales as buyer types. Discuss the process. Ask how you would handle some of the variations that I mentioned today. How do you handle some of the variations? Are they thrown through the assistant and the assistant purges out the junk and only the juicy ones go to the right salespeople? And depending upon quotas and bonuses, I'm sure it's probably skewed even after that. So thinking in the ways of what's best for the hotel, what is it that you do for these variations of interest? How do you handle those spontaneous interests? The not so spontaneous but creative interests, the moderate time frame but volumed variations, all of the things that salespeople are having to deal with, that it's just not this randomization. You can categorize these, you can direct them correctly, you can respond in the sequence that's valuable to the type of business they represent as a buyer type. It all has a new way of approaching how to market group sales. If you rethink group sales as buyer types. So there you have it. Wanted to talk about that. I'm going to break it down more as I want to bring certain examples of marketing strategies for particular buyer types as in our conversations in the coming weeks. Intermixed with all the other fun stuff that we talk about with AI marketing and what have you, and transient marketing and all that kind of crazy stuff. But I don't want to just keep leaving group sales out like we have over the decades of just, oh, that's the way it is. That's what they do. That's what they've always done. We have to rethink them into a buyer type category for it to be working better. So for all of those that you watch us on our live TV channel, the Hospitality channel, our 209 countries, thank you so much for that. Or on our Apple, iOS, or Google Play app, thank you for watching us there. Or if you're watching us on the Simulcast of Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, Twitch, thank you for catching us on that. And if you do catch us on the repeat of the show, which we do 11:30 a.m. Sydney, Australia time, and London England time. That catches our APAC and our Mideast and European friends as well, to have a little bit more reasonable time frame to catch the show. As always, if you want to catch any of this show or any of the older shows, we've been doing this for 12 years every week. Never missed one. You can go to hospitalitychannel.tv, pick it up by broadcast date, host or hosts, and topic, and research it that way. We have a linear feed. We have an on-demand feed. We also have Hospitality Radio, where we have our podcast, and along with a lot of other great podcasts from around the world of wonderful experts in all fields: sales, marketing, operations, HR, accounting. It's all at hospitalityradio.com. That is in 39 countries. And the TV show is translated into 11 languages. And if you're a hospitality marketer professional, want to join our peer level group, go to hospitalitymarketing.club, put your email in, and we'll go from there. So with that, my name is Lauren Gray. I thank you for the privilege of your time and look forward to talking to you all